At that wedding, I had already died once, long before my heart actually stopped beating inside me. The lights were so harsh they bleached my vision white, and every face in the room stared. I was pinned to the hospital bed, unable to move, my whole body trapped beneath strangers' hands. Chloe leaned close to my ear and smiled, saying she'd waited 10 years for this moment. She told me my father's death had been her doing, and my mind went completely blank. I tried desperately to look at Ryan, but he never looked back at me once. He only lowered his face and pressed the pillow down, his voice colder than death. "I never loved you. It's always been her," he said, and everything inside me collapsed. That was when I understood I hadn't lost. They were simply disposing of me in public. But when I opened my eyes again, I was standing outside my classroom, back in school. Students moved through the hallway, laughing and talking, while Chloe pulled my bank card free. She smiled and said she was helping me buy Ryan a watch for his birthday. My hand shot out and clamped around her wrist before I could even think. The touch felt so real that I froze for a second before understanding everything. I was back. I had really come back. And this time I remembered everything clearly. She blinked at me, still smiling, and said, "Emily, don't you love him most?" I stared at her, nausea rising hard in my throat, but I said nothing. She didn't wait for an answer and immediately yanked harder, trying to rip the card free. I refused to loosen my grip, and her expression changed almost instantly in front of everyone. Her voice softened right away. "It's just a birthday gift. Don't make this weird." The moment she said it, the boys always orbiting around her stepped forward together. "Why are you acting like that?" one said, while another added, "That's not even your card." The entire classroom entrance went quiet, and people in the hallway started stopping to watch. Someone had already pulled out a phone and started recording before I even spoke. I stood there with my chest tightening, because I knew exactly how this had started before. In my last life, this was the first move she made against me publicly. From here, she slowly turned me into the girl who used people and played innocent. If I explained myself now, it would only sound like defensive, guilty, pathetic backtracking. I looked at her while she lowered her head, pretending she didn't want trouble. That performance was crueler than any accusation, because everyone else would speak for her. My throat felt tight, but I didn't back down. I looked straight at her. "So that's what you've been telling people about me?" I asked, each word deliberate. She didn't answer. She only sighed softly and said, "Let's just drop it." People around us immediately rushed to support her, exactly like they always had before. "She's trying to be nice," someone said. "Some people just don't know their place." Their voices stacked over each other, wave after wave, until the pressure felt physical. My fingers went cold, and for 1 second I almost bowed my head again. But I didn't. I slipped the card back into my bag and explained nothing. I knew better now. I had to save that breath for a bigger stage. And I already knew exactly when that stage would come for all of us. At lunch in the cafeteria, she started again exactly like I knew she would. She announced in front of everyone that she was treating the whole class today. Then she reached for my card. I didn't hand it over this time. Her face stiffened, and the people around her exploded almost immediately with outrage. "Seriously?" One snapped, "She won't even pay." Another said, loud enough for everyone nearby. One of the boys slapped my tray from my hands without warning or hesitation. Grease splashed across my clothes, and suddenly the entire cafeteria was staring at me. Some people raised phones. Some laughed. Some just watched with hungry, entertained faces. In that moment, I really couldn't breathe. The sound of it all was crushing. I heard freeloader, then told you, and every word pressed harder against my ribs. My hands were shaking, but I didn't retreat. I pointed straight at the security camera. "Check the cameras," I said, loud enough for half the room to hear clearly. A teacher rushed over. Chloe immediately grabbed my arm and called it a misunderstanding. She even spoke like she was protecting me, and everyone looked at her admiringly. That was when I finally understood her real skill wasn't lying. It was control. She controlled how other people saw everything before I ever got to speak. For the first time, I refused to follow the script she had written. I said those boys had tried to steal my card, and I wouldn't apologize. The teacher sent someone to pull the security footage, and their faces changed instantly. The boys were taken away, and when Chloe returned, her eyes were already red. In front of everyone, she looked at me and asked, "Did you really have to?" Her tone made it sound like I had destroyed her instead of protecting myself. I said nothing, but I could feel the room beginning to shift around us. For the first time, some people looked uncertain instead of automatically taking her side. That afternoon, Ryan stormed into the classroom and stopped right at the doorway. In front of everyone, he looked at me and asked, "Why didn't you give her the card?" His tone was cold and sharp, and he stood beside Chloe like her defender. My heart sank because the scene was almost identical to the one before. But this time I saw clearly what I hadn't wanted to see then. He wasn't being manipulated. He was never confused. He had chosen her all along. I looked at him and said, "If you want it, buy it yourself." The classroom fell silent in a single breath, and his expression darkened immediately. "You're being ridiculous," he said, then laughed in front of everyone watching us. "She's just jealous," he added, and low laughter spread around the room again. Standing there, I finally understood what public humiliation really felt like in the body. He had turned me into a dramatic, irrational girl with one smug sentence. A cold ache spread through my chest, but I refused to retreat again. I looked straight at him and asked, "Then explain why you're always with her." He said nothing. I kept going before he could regain control of it. "Why do you go out with her every single day after class?" The whole room seemed to lock in place. Then I asked the last question. "Which one of us are you actually with?" I said, and nobody moved. His face changed completely. That was when I said, "We're done," and meant it. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity, clean and sharp and overdue. After school, the Lincoln was waiting outside the gates like it always did. Everyone was watching when I walked toward it, and the driver was still waiting. He was waiting for Chloe to get him first, just like before, like usual. I opened the door, then said only one word, "Drive," and he froze. He didn't move, so I called my father right there in front of everyone. 10 minutes later, the car returned, and the driver rushed out to open it. I didn't get in. I stood there and looked directly inside the car first. Then I said, "They get out, or I don't get in at all." In front of the entire school, Chloe and Ryan were forced out of my car. The crowd around us erupted immediately. "Wait, what?" Someone whispered near the curb. Another voice said, "Then who is she?" And the rumors started right there. I slid into the seat and watched them standing on the pavement outside. That abandoned feeling they had handed me before finally belonged to them instead. After that, I fired the driver and dismissed the housekeeper who always defended Chloe. For the first time in years, the house felt clean enough to breathe inside. The next morning, Chloe tried to get in the car, and I refused again. She had to take the bus after that, and the gossip spread fast. I didn't say much. I was waiting for a bigger stage, a final collapse. That chance came on Ryan's birthday. Chloe reserved 5 hotel tables for the party. She invited everyone. Of course I went too, because I knew their plan. She placed me at the most visible seat and kept filling my glass. Ryan even served me food himself, both of them smiling with fake sweetness. Everyone was watching. They were betting I'd pay the bill like I always had. When the check finally came, she couldn't hold herself together any longer. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "Can you just cover it this once?" I didn't lower my voice. I looked at her and asked clearly instead, "You invited everyone. Why am I paying?" I said, and the whole room froze. Her face went white immediately. Ryan jumped in before she could recover herself. "He's your boyfriend. That's what you do," he said, trying to corner me again. I looked at him and asked, "You just called me jealous earlier today. Now I'm your girlfriend again? I said, and someone nearby laughed out loud. His face turned green with anger. Chloe panicked and claimed I had offered. I pulled out my phone and played the group chat invitation she sent. She tried saying it was fake, but by then nobody believed her anymore. The whispers started fast, then multiplied into open judgment from every direction. She can't pay. She's been faking it. So that was all lies? The same people who used to circle around her began stepping backward instead. Some cursed at her openly. For the first time, nobody rushed to protect her. She stood in the middle of the room shaking, completely exposed under everyone's eyes. Ryan still tried to pressure me, saying nobody should leave unless I paid. That sentence lit the entire room on fire. People started shouting at him. Someone slammed a glass down. Someone else shoved a chair back hard enough. The whole party collapsed into chaos, and I didn't stay to watch it. I paid only for my own meal, signed the receipt, and walked away. When I reached the door, I heard Chloe's voice finally crack behind me. Please, just this once. She begged, and every person there heard her. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking and left them inside that ruin. The next day, the whole school was talking about what had happened there. They'd all been forced to split the bill, and it was over $10,000 each. People turned on each other. There was screaming, shoving, and eventually police involvement. Parents were called. Ryan got slapped across the face right there in public. And Chloe? Nobody came to pick her up when everything finally ended. She was left standing alone in the hotel lobby, surrounded by staring strangers. Exactly the way they had once left me alone under everyone's eyes before. Later, she was thrown out of my house and rang the doorbell all night. I stood on the balcony above her and watched without making a sound. When she looked up at me, the arrogance in her eyes was finally gone. What was left had caved in completely, like a building after the fire. I closed the window and said nothing, because nothing needed saying anymore then. This game had been moving toward its ending since she started plotting 10 years earlier. The difference was that, this time, I survived long enough to watch it close. And in the end, the final bill was hers, and she paid it herself.